All right, I'm going to ask that my panel members make it slowly up to the front. And I believe Carla is supposed to sit in that one. I've just been told. So. Gladly. Oh, good. Thank you. I heard there's a joke in that, Lana. Lana told me. All right. So today we're just going to share the mic. There is going to be a mic floating in the floor, I believe. Right, Renee? And again, we're gonna try and get some questions that are coming from you if you feel there's an opportunity. Okay, I need a step ladder to get on this thing. It's like I gotta be like graceful about it, but okay. You don't mind if I don't have my shoes on, eh? So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the panel with the crew. In fact, I have to move a little bit this way. Sorry, Mohammed. I just got to so I can look at you guys. So we're going to have them introduce themselves. And we kind of said, you know what? We're going to do it a little bit like, I don't know, Toastmasters. Is Colton Wiegers in the crowd, by the way? Oh, he's here. Are you on your crutches? Oh, see, we have a disabled one. That's the other part to our team, Colton Wiegers. So he's been working with mom and dad, sadly, for 3 years, 4 years, almost 4 years. So, what's that? Sadly for him. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to introduce the speaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start probably on my left with, or my right with Haylie, and we'll move all the way down. And we're going to start, just let them do the brief introduction of who they are and what their role or business is as well.
So, hi everybody, I'm Haylie with Warman Physiotherapy and Wellness. I'm a physiotherapist. I opened my clinic in 2014 in Warman and then my one in Saskatoon this year as well. And my role, I guess, on this panel is more from the rehab and prevention side with the group.
You know what, I'm going to add to that. Sorry, let's just carry on. Roland, and also why you're passionate about what you do.
Why I'm passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about helping people help themselves to be able to thrive and not just survive within their life and daily living. And in particular, my most significant area of interest is with pelvic health, but I also extend that within all of the different areas of physiotherapy as well. And just trying to make sure that when people are coming to the clinic, they're safe and supported in a family-friendly environment.
All right. Hanif?
Hi, everybody. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Hanif Hemani. I have a recruitment agency, Express Employment Professionals. We do professional staffing and professional recruitment, temporary and permanent. I also have a consulting company, Hemani Management Group. On the consulting side, we focus primarily on performance management, engagement, and those types of things. And so I guess from my perspective, I'm not an HR person. I'm more of a management person, but I do have some HR avenues that we play around in. As far as what I'm passionate about, I'm very passionate about engagement, employee engagement. To me, it often is the core of many things in the HR space and in the performance management space. So I'm looking forward to sharing, and I'm looking forward to learning as well from all of you.
You turn it on? Yeah, perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Roger Delaquis. I'm the Director of Sales and Account Management with Manulife for the province of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. I needed the same sign for the Bomber fan because I'm from Winnipeg. There's two, everyone. Hello. But I don't live in Saskatchewan, so I guess that's the disclaimer. So you're on your own, Carla. I'm just kidding. As always. What I'm passionate about is obviously helping employer groups, but also helping folks like Deb Wiegers and so on, and arming them with products that they can go out and present to you that will help you. You know, a lot of the things that we talked about this morning and that we're going to talk about on the panel are things that carriers are trying to design products to address a lot of this. So that's everything from, being proactive with disability claims to managing health, financial wellness, and kind of taking a holistic approach to things. So you never see the same situation for any employer group. You see similarities, but you don't see the same things. So being able to work with the end client, but also with folks like the folks at Wiegers is always a treat, and it's I'm happy to be here, so look forward to it, Deb.
So good morning. So hopefully don't hold it against me that I am a Bomber fan. I do believe blue and gold, as anybody who knows me will tell you. So my name is Carla. I'm the HR manager at a company called Hundseth Powerline Construction, which is a family-owned and operated business here in Saskatoon. We have about 215 employees in our organization. And I've been there about a year and a half. So the thing that I'm really passionate about is just business in general, which I know sounds ironic for an HR person to say. But to me, HR is just more than the administrative people part. It's also being intertwined into the business to be able to help it to be successful. So I like to be behind the scenes, helping people get the right tools and resources to help the business do that.
Thanks, Carl. And I want to actually have Todd and Trevor are in the crowd. Whereabouts are you guys? Wave out. Thank you so much for lending Carla to us and coming out and being such awesome clients. So, all right, so first question. Let's just describe in your mind what organizational well-being means. Starting with you.
Start on the other side this time?
Okay, let's start with you. Okay, you think about it. We'll start with Carla. In your mind, what is the definition of organizational well-being?
So interesting question, because I think it encompasses a lot. If I could bucket it, organizational well-being to me starts with the employees. At the end of the day, any company can produce, say, a pencil, but it's the people who put that pencil together that make it unique. So well-being starts with having a motivated, engaged employee base. For any of you who've worked with Hewitt on engagement surveys, you know they have the 3 S's, stay, say, and strive. And those always just resonate with me. They're really important measures to, is your staff motivated and engaged? Well-being, or wellness, also, or well-being of the organization, as well as the financial aspect of it. At the end of the day, a company needs to make money, and we need to help them do that. And it's also about developing your talent for the future. So today is today, but the future is, knocking at the gate, so we want to make sure we have all the right things in place to be well.
I would agree with Carla, but I would also like to add that, I think it's a mix of 2 things. The employee base is critical. We talked a little bit this morning about having the right person for the right job and so on. There is some onus on leadership to lead by example. And by that I mean, if you foster an environment for your employees that is welcoming, that is open and communicative, and as well as, full of energy, employees respond well to that. So, to Carla's point, it's definitely a big part of the employees because they're the biggest part of your organization. But leadership is critical in all that, simply because if the leaders are showing an example of being, down, or we have an expression in our office about folks that sometimes get a little magoo, if you will, it's hard to be energized when you're in that kind of an environment. So as a leader, you always want to put on, dare I say, a brave face and lead by example so that you revive the energy in the organization to make sure that things go. And then if you're firing on all cylinders and the employees as well as the employer is on the same page, then productivity goes up instantly, and that's all directly linked for sure.
I agreed. I think it really comes down to a combination of really three factors when you really boil it down. Number 1, it's productivity, and number 2, it's profitability, and number 3, it's engagement. And how those 3 kind of confluence each other, I think, are really one way to measure organizational well-being. For those that know me, I don't like to give answers. I like to ask questions more than anything else. And I think that it's really in asking questions that you start to get a sense of, what do I need to ask within our organizations to get a better sense of organizational well-being. And so some of the questions that I think we should ask ourselves is, what is the level of employee commitment within our organization? Are they aware of the vision? When I do my consulting work, the very first thing I do is I ask every single employee, what is the vision of your organization? And some of you in this room know that I do that because I've done it with your employees as well. And what are you getting out of that? Do you believe in that vision? And is that something that you're committed to? Do you understand what is expected of you as an employee? And as a manager, do you feel that your people understand exactly what is expected of you? Do you believe management cares? And are you given the tools to make those expectations come to fruition? Do you respect management? You don't have to agree with management, but do you respect management? And are you accountable to each other? And I think all of these questions lead to sort of those three: profitability, productivity, and engagement. So that would be kind of my thought on it.
As far as from my perspective, organizational well-being also has to come down to the culture within the organization as well. So the management, the owners, they set the culture, and then the people that we bring into that organization as employees, it does come back to the right person for the right job, and you have to have the right personality fit for the culture. So you're talking about those people that are fun suckers. Got to be very specific with that. You don't want your fun suckers to be causing problems in the organizational well-being. And productivity isn't just how long people are sitting at their desk, but how much they're actually accomplishing within that time. So you can sit at your desk for an hour and only get 5 minutes of work done. It just depends on how all everything is set up that way and what all are they also thinking about. Are they worried about their productivity? Are they worried about their wellness and their health because X, Y, or Z reason? Maybe they've got family members that were just diagnosed with something or other and they're worried about their well-being down the road. And if I just sit here for an hour and do my work, am I actually going to be better or not, right? So that's one of the things that I would also consider in this regard.
And also, I guess maybe, and it would kind of move into maybe a segue into wellness. Wellness, well-being, being wellness. Wellness, they say, is real, but vague, because we don't really know what that word means. So I believe it should be well-being. But it is wellness as it relates to you, because that is part of what your field is.
Yeah, and I think that people like to throw around wellness as we do this in wellness. Great. So what is your wellness that you're doing? And there's lots of different ways to incorporate wellness from a physical and mental and spiritual standpoint into our organizations as well. Because if we're helping people to be more well, so getting more movement, feeling more productive, having better mental clarity, all of those different kinds of things, it can actually lend itself to that productivity as well.
Hanif, and we'll get you guys all to add to that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think in that sense, there's no easy answers, and there's a lot of questions again. But it's about kind of understanding the totality of it. Productivity is a function of doing something, and whatever that something is, and making sure that we define what that something is to actually get a better gauge of what, if that individual is actually accomplishing the task, and not simply sitting, not minutes at a desk, but actually accomplishing tasks during those minutes, and really identifying that. So I certainly agree.
The question of wellness is, like Deb said, it's just, oh my God, where do you start? There is a persona to wellness to think that, okay, we're going to have a wellness initiative. Everybody thinks they got to go to the gym, and guys like me bolt for the door because I need to go anyway. But what's important about wellness is that it means a lot of different things for everybody. So if you are launching or you're looking at wellness, what is wellness for the individuals within your organization? It could mean a whole bunch of different things. Haylie mentioned spiritual, it could be a whole bunch of different things. So the question is, how do you accomplish this within the realm of your organization? Well, the simple truth is, you set small goals. Wellness for me might mean I should start taking a walk after dinner. Wellness for him is going to the gym that 5th time a week. So you know what I'm saying? Like there is a fundamental difference between what makes a person feel well versus just measuring exercise. Financial stress, we had an example from that with Sherry this morning, is a massive thing too. So you look at wellness from a holistic standpoint, there's financial wellness, there's physical wellness, there's mental health. Somehow, some way, you got to combine it all. What I would end with is, generally speaking, when people are a little bit more active, without making them feel like they should be the next level, generally feel better. And if you feel better, then the mental health aspect gets addressed. And ironically enough, you start to think a little clearer. You might be able to get some of your finances in order and all this kind of thing. So there is a link between all of these things. And so the question is identifying what it means for each individual. And it's about taking baby steps to get there.
And yes, you just said that, and I'll say it quickly, and then Carla, because that's what I had made a point of saying. this isn't some big project that's going to cost thousands of dollars. I mean, I don't know if you've watched our clips, but I mean, something as simple as the gratitude tree that the team has put together right there. If you take a look, bang. So it's a tree that's set up in our window, and there's little leaves on the side, and then our mission is to be thinking positively and be able to focus on, might not be so good a day, but make it a better day. And they add to that tree, and it's filled up like amazingly fast. So, that is a simple, didn't cost anything, but it's messaging. It's messaging, right, Carla?
Going last is tough because everybody says all the good stuff already. But just to add, I think just to summarize some of that, it's again coming up with a common understanding of what you're going to measure when you talk about having wellness in your organization. And then just making sure to, Roger's point, sometimes it's very independent. So just making sure that if you do offer something, that it's not just for one particular person or one group, that you have a variety of options available.
So with you having a bunch of guys that are already in the field and they're working and they're kind of sort of exercising, but I know that Haylie would say probably doing the same thing too many times, but what would you do? You've got office, you've got field, you've got multiple locations. What would be two things that you could say that you do on a wellness level?
Such an easy solution, right? So to your point, yes, some of our positions are trade positions, and those guys are very active in their role. But we're happy that we have the partnership with Wiegers because we do have the gym membership to offer them as well. So we talk to them about that quite frequently. We also have a really great EFAP program, so we continue to talk about that as well and the offerings there. But just listening to what they're looking for as well. I had one person approach me, they wanted to quit smoking, so we sort of did some research to find some avenues for that. But again, tailoring it to the individual is just what we constantly keep trying to do.
Absolutely. And Manulife's got a really cool project that they're on. I'm not sure if it's project or offering, just in seconds. Just tell me the crux of what you're doing, because Manulife, as an insurance company, they're there to be the support, as much as we may not think that they're doing but they're doing a lot. The insurance companies are doing a lot, and they understand it's important to partner with this.
Yeah, so just very quickly, Deb, so a lot of the carriers are trying to identify this issue, because if you try to tailor to every individual, it doesn't work. So a lot of the stress broccolis and so on is a bit of a promotion, but I'll just say it very quickly. We're going to be launching a wellness program that's tailored to the individual but offered on a group basis. And it's a holistic approach. You get points for your steps. It's app-based, but you also get steps for going to the doctor. You get you get points for going to the doctor. You get steps for going to the dentist. Believe it or not everybody goes to the dentist once a year. Goes to the doctor once a year. So it's a point-based, but it's a rewards-based system or program that will be offered to group insurance clients to help take a proactive measure to dealing with disability, mental health, and physical illness. So it's coming next year, so we're getting a bit of a sneak peek to it now, but we're thrilled about it, we're excited about it, because we know that there's a need for it, and I know a lot of the other carriers are also working on different programs like that as well.
And, I know Blue Cross is doing some things, so in a very different way. So the Rhesus Guardians, it does have a way to play into this, and the Push Play project that you're doing. So, and if you're doing it as an organization, to Roger's point is, yes, sometimes you're going to have to gift them. It's all about rewards. We're like children. We need to win things and high five, but that's okay. If it works, let's just do it.
Well, there is stats to say that, everybody knows they should go to the gym more often. They should take better care of themselves. They should do different things. But if you have a small reward, whatever that may be, there's statistically speaking, there's a 38% increasement in engagement. So a wellness program's only as good as how the members want to participate in it. So if you have to entice them with a bit of a reward, let's do it, because the proactive measure to this and the fact that it's customizable to each individual based on their own unique needs is a big part of the success that we know will be part of it. So a rewards-based program works well. We already have a question.
Yep. Is there, Renee? That's what we want?
So how, we're with Manulife also, the company that I am responsible for, and I saw that you already had a base program of wellness. But my question is how can we reassure our employees that you won't be data mining in terms of getting information on them to basically down the road, sort of refuse their claims or whatever because they haven't exercised 3 times a day, or they haven't done this, or they haven't done that. So my only comment on this is to make sure that when you roll out this program, that there's no fallback on that score.
If I could just say, I mean, I'm really happy you brought that forward, because data is the currency of the future. What I will say about the program, just very quickly, is that it is housed within Vitality itself, not within Manulife, and it will not be accessible to the underwriters in terms of mining your employees for future products or any underwriting decisions. So that is a very good, and I'm very happy you brought that forward, because a lot of folks are very concerned about what happens to your data, as you should be, because privacy is very important. But as far as the program itself is concerned, it will be housed in Canada, independent of Manulife, with our Vitality partners, and I'm very happy you brought that forward.
Yeah. So, what about government? Where do they fit in with all these people? What do you think they should be doing more? There's no one in the government here. We can speak freely.
Raise your hands if you are in the government.
Yeah, raise your hands. Or you may not want to. I don't know. All right. Carla wants to start? Yeah. We'll keep reversing it.
Sure. So from my perspective, again, kind of as a Canadian, what I think the government does have a role to play, definitely. I think about, when the Canada Food Guide was promoted, the government took a pretty heavy support for that. So, when I think about wellness, I think the government definitely has a heavy role to play in terms of training and development and just knowledge base and helping support organizations so that trickles down to our employees. So it's not just the employer saying, hey, we have a wellness program, you need to be well. It's also coming sort of from society saying, hey, let's take care of each other.
Sure.
Can we skip me? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. Well, you can run.
No, from the government's perspective, there's so many different things that they need to be part of. We had a pharmacy expert give us an internal pharmaco update, and there's talk about a national formulary that should help Canadians in their wellness. Well, that was something that was tabled before the election, and the election has come now, and we're still not sure where that's going. So as far as government's involvement, they need to be involved. They are at a high level when it comes to certain things that help folks, right down from drugs to smoking cessation and anti-obesity and different things like that. But, their role specifically at an organizational level is not quite there yet. And if there isn't anybody from the government here, I'd say that they need to be more involved. But to what level, I guess, and this would be a question for you folks, to what level do you want the government involved in your wellness? In your wellness programs, or even as an employer group? It really raises a whole bunch of different questions. And what should they focus on? Should they focus on drugs, because that's a billion-dollar industry? Or do they focus just on physical activity, or what is it, right? So it's a big question, and I know Manulife, as well as a lot of most carriers, lobby the government on a regular basis to get them involved. But they're standing fast, and there's no real direct engagement at this point, specifically on wellness, if I can say it that way.
Yep.
Hello, there we go. I'm actually quite conflicted when it comes to government and sort of the role that they need to play. Wellness, we talked earlier about how it's different for different people. And so there's certainly an individual component to it, and I get a little scared when governments start to meddle in some of those things. So, certainly there, to your point, there's, be careful what you ask for at times. Having said that, my background is actually in the pharmaceutical industry, and I grew up with, for 20 odd years, with a big company named Pfizer. And so, to that extent, I think there are some some opportunities for government to get involved with, with regulation and formularies and these sorts of things to make medications more accessible. I think the bigger, actually, opportunity for governments is to, you can lead someone to lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I think from the wellness perspective, offering opportunities and rebates for joining a gym membership or something like that would be a positive step for somebody to kind of, to take that step. Those types of things, I think, is not a bad idea. Destigmatizing mental illness, for example, and those types of initiatives or working with organizations that work in that space, I think the government has a place to play in that sort of perspective around awareness. But as far as getting involved in sort of the day-to-day, I'm a little conflicted, so.
I had attended the Canadian Physiotherapy Association Congress actually in Charlottetown this year, and they did an entire presentation on our aging population and are we set up for this aging population. And part of that, when you take a look at how some other places have everything set up from a government level. So we have our physician appointments covered by our health card. We have some various things covered by the health card. Comparatively to, for instance, they use the Netherlands, where they're actually building hospitals with fewer rooms as opposed to hospitals with bigger, more volume for individuals. And when you look at what we have going on here, there's people overflowing in the hospitals because there isn't anywhere for them to go in the interim. So they're too well for the hospital, but they're still not well enough for home. And when we think of it in that regard, well, what's missing? They haven't included physical therapy. They haven't included personal training. They haven't included some of those rehab things that over in the Netherlands, that's standard. And we don't allow for people to age in place either. So we have a whole bunch of people that end up stuck at home because they can't actually leave because they're limited with their mobility, but nobody's willing to go and see them because they're not going to get paid the same as when people come to see me. And so the way that our whole healthcare system is set up, from my perspective, is that it's a very reactive medicine model. So you come see me when you're sick, but I don't really get anything for seeing you to help to prevent illness. And a lot of those models over, again, Netherlands, Europe, and things like that, doctors get paid a higher premium when they're doing well visits as opposed to reactive medicine visits. So the fewer times their client caseload end up in the ER, they actually have a better premium that way.
What incentive?
Is my understanding, right? So when we think of how are we set up currently, the way that we're set up currently is going to be very interesting in a few years if we don't make some pretty significant changes really quickly, because we're going to have that aging population and everybody's living longer, right? Which is great, but if we can't live at home and that quality of life is lower, does that actually benefit us in the end?
No, that's a great point, and it moves into that preventative, because that's where the government, Deb speaking, is lacking, because we're reactive, right? You look at our healthcare system, everything's reactive, and we're quick fix. Why do we have an opioid problem, right? This is like, I mean, the street drug that came from the doctors, and so they understand that we have a problem. They're part of helping us. But we went way too far in this, way too far.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of research in regards to a variety of different things that can help. But when people don't feel like they have the support in order to be able to do that, and I mean, again, mental health as well. So there's a huge stigma for mental health if people aren't seeking that care. There's just a wide variety of things, and from a preventative management standpoint, beyond just, do some exercise before you're hurt, but from a preventative standpoint, in how can we actually set up our population, our employees, to be able to be as successful as possible prior to illness to promote wellness is critical.
Absolutely. I should ask Carla, because I'm not sure. Maybe I'll give an idea for you guys. When you guys get on the site, when the guys jump... Oh. The question there? Okay.
Oh, that put the pressure on me. Sorry.
Do it. Go for it.
Hi, Deb. I just want to quickly add to that, maybe. With our work, what we see a lot of times is the opportunity to maybe check the resources for funding from the governments. They do quite a bit of work, but you have to kind of dig for that. For example, there is an agricultural partnership right now going on through the federal government. So if you have some mental health initiatives that are going to help your community, you will have some funding availability for that. It can be raised up to about $50,000. So it's pretty significant. So what I would encourage everybody to do in their workplaces is maybe go ahead and research inside of those grant offerings. And I know sometimes when you take grants, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do that. But really, it's not as difficult as you may think. And if you need some help, just give us a call.
That's a great point. Great point. No, quickly, I was going to say, Carla, I'm going to give you guys an idea because I work, or I know somebody in the mining company, and they bring in, maybe this is a great job for Karen, because they bring in actually in the morning before the guys all get into their big vehicles, whatever they do in the potash mines, but the yoga instructor comes out. And they do like 10 minutes of stretching in the morning. And you're talking all guys, right? And they're going like rolling their eyes. But at the end of that, when Russ was telling me, he says, all of a sudden she didn't show up because she was sick. And they're all going like, well, what's on? Like, how come she's not here? Like, I mean, because they were actually starting to feel better, right? But it's just that little piece, that little extra that can probably prevent the next stage, right? So, okay, total rewards. So, because I believe, and I mean, Hanif, you can answer that, and Gary, anytime you jump in, I mean, organizational well-being, it's not just about wellness. We've already determined there's all those things. So I'm hearing that total rewards nowadays is not, it's gone far beyond the basics of what we would see, compensation, benefits, maybe a little flex time, but there's many more elements that are rolling into now total rewards compensation. Thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that, that's the traditional sort of way of looking at things. And certainly, I guess the idea really is that every employee kind of has their own life plan or work plan. And how do we incorporate our rewards to sort of be congruent to that plan? And so one size doesn't fit all. And so there are benefits that are working into that. I'm going to give you an interesting example just as just a little thing that can go a long way. I had an employee one time, a young fellow, about 30 years old, had his first child. Then he had his second child, which turned out to be twins, so he had 3 children. And then a year later, they had their 4th child. So I'm not going to comment on birth control, but what I am going to say is this individual had 4 children under 4. A young fellow, and we had a company car at the time, and the company car was a small little sedan. And we requested a van for him through HR at the time, and they denied our request for the van. And just as an interesting anecdote, so I happened to be in management at the time, and I had a big 7-passenger car, only because I could haul a bunch of golf clubs. And so we switched. And I said, you take my car and I'll take yours. And HR, well, not HR, but the folks at the head office had a big issue with this, but technically there was nothing against doing it, and they couldn't understand why did I do that? Well, I did that because as part of that total rewards of being a great employee, he got a better car so he could sort of deal with his family issues and take his kids around and such. So these are some of the ways that we now need to kind of look at what is the life plan and what are the challenges that employees have facing themselves, and how as employers can we weave some of these things in to kind of meet their plans. Now, do you think that employee was an engaged employee? Do you think they were grateful? Do you think they're going to stick around? Do you think, yes, all of the above? So I think these are some interesting examples of different ways that we need to kind of look at things.
Yeah. Carla? I'm going to comment.
Sorry, Deb, I was just going to quickly say on the yoga thing, you might be surprised how many of our guys actually do yoga. They won't tell you that in a group this size, but one-on-one, they'll be honest about it.
That's good.
And it's definitely come as a learning lesson for them, so that's good.
So I just because as an employer, just 2 things that you think go beyond the scope of traditional total compensation rewards.
So for me, it's not just the financial piece. It would be things that you do, and I hate to sound all mushy in HR, but it's really the things that you do from the heart, which comes from the culture of your company. So if your culture is to look after one another, that's what your total rewards program becomes. It's really just looking after each other.
Yeah, certainly to what Hanif's saying. Roger, any comment?
Yeah, along Carla's lines, for sure, that mushy stuff that we talk about is extremely powerful. Recognition is something that, and I don't know how many of you actually poll your employees to find out, where they are at and within your organization, how happy they are. Employee recognition is incredibly important because it actually fosters a level of engagement. We talk about engagement, we talk about productivity, and how all these things are together. Recognition doesn't cost you a lot, but it's a very important and powerful tool that should become part of your total rewards program. Employees now have a much higher expectation of what I can speak to as what a benefit plan would be. But as an employer, you have an enormous amount of pressure coming, from all sides. And so the work environment, the recognition, as well as the total rewards package in terms of benefits and, obviously pay is in there as well, really are critical to the success of the program. And we all know how much turnover hurts, when we lose employees and we have to recruit to find them, and the costs involved with that. So having an established program that recognizes, the good workers, that encourages those that need it, really helps reduce that and ultimately helps the bottom line for sure.
It's a great point, Roger and Carla, because we know that employee retention and attraction is huge. It goes beyond just your living wage. It goes beyond group benefits, the growing benefit, group retirement savings plans, but also over 55% of employees said that their career milestones weren't even recognized. So no one's recognizing how long they've been at work. And then they leave. So more needs to be done to engage. So awesome.
Yeah. And just because now you're on the mic, we're going to just swing this over, because part of total rewards and compensation is when we talk about that financial, I know we don't think it's our responsibility. We may just give an RSP to our employees or increase their wage, and then we kind of say, you go away and you all figure it out. And that sounds really awesome and easy, but it's not working anymore, is it,
No,
Renee?
it's the number 3 item that employees want. They want health and dental benefits, for sure. And then they want a group retirement savings plan. They want to have that growing benefit. Increased pay is like 8th or 9th on the list.
They often ask for it in the interview.
Yes, they do.
When they're interviewing for the job, the employer, you'll ask the employee, do you have any questions for me? They get right into it and want to know what kind of matching you have on your group RSP or retirement, what sort of benefit plan you have. They're asking for it right out front.
It's absolutely true. And I think the biggest thing is when we think about debt levels in Canada, I know many of you heard me talk about this last year. The numbers are rising. We had 3 interest rate increases last year. That's resulted in an increased cost of borrowing for Canadians. So 178% debt to income ratio right now for Canadians means for every dollar of income you bring in, you have $1.78 in debt. That's on average.
Yeah.
So it's a sobering stat. We need to do more as plan sponsors to create that growing benefit.
Yeah.
So after the massage claim is one and done, what's left?
Exactly. And we have become a little bit reactive to that, because I'm sure there's a few in the room that have had that employee come forward and ask for an advance. Maybe more than once. So what is that telling us? Most of us aren't going to the employer to say, I'm a shit show. I don't know how to do my planning, right? But when desperate moments call for desperate times, they're asking for an advance. So what does that say? We need to go beyond that. We need and sadly, and Colton, I'm not picking on you, but the millennials probably didn't get the best of training from the parents, because life just became very easy in terms of, lines of credits and cars, and we're going to send you to school, and we want to do all those things. But what we missed out is the fundamentals of how to just even budget and plan, because they haven't a clue. So then you want these employees in the workplace that are stressed because they haven't figured this part out. We have a bit of a responsibility, and it plays into what we would do as employers and what we can do as benefit firms to provide some kind of vehicle. And I know that we're working on something that might provide modules for training and things like that, because it's real now. And it's talked about every 4 articles I read now, which that's concerning. So All right, let's just go on to digital trends. Wow, it's everywhere. And I know that some of us I know Cliff didn't ever want to get on Facebook, but I think he's probably the most addictive of all of us, right, Cliff? Is he here? He's probably hiding now. Yeah, on his phone. Okay, so we all know digital innovation is transforming how we do business in Canada. So is it a challenge or an opportunity in the fields that you're working in? If it's a challenge, share it. If it's an opportunity, tell us really briefly what that opportunity is.
So with me at our clinic, we have an electronic medical record system that actually incorporates a client interface with that, which has been super helpful because people aren't losing their pieces of paper with their exercises on them. Oh, I lost that. I didn't do them. Okay. Now there's no excuse, which is really nice in that regard. But then the other thing that's also really good specifically within healthcare is we have telehealth now. So with the telehealth, it's a secure line where we can go and actually do some consults in remote locations that typically don't have great individuals in that area, or perhaps even no providers in an area, or they're overworked, to be able to provide consults without having to come from Isla Lacrosse all the way down to Saskatoon for their consults in between procedures and things like that. And then for us, for physiotherapists, I do some video conferencing with clients that just can't get to see me because there isn't anybody in their area. They'd be driving 5-6+ hours, and from a stress standpoint, you're having to pay for an appointment potentially, having to drive all of that time, take time off work, all of those different kinds of things. It ends up putting on lots of stress and strain and all of those as well.
Loss of income to the business.
Loss of income, huge loss of income to the business as well. So, I mean, you're paying for the medical leave, and you've got, all of those different kinds of things. So the more that we're able to use that to help people where they're at, I think is great. It doesn't necessarily limit the ability for those that actually need a physical exam, but for the ones that are particularly between appointments and they're already being followed by a specialist and they're in a remote location, it makes it really beneficial for them and for the employer, because then they get to stay at work. They go to a room with the telehealth, they do their appointment, and then they come back to work. They're not gone for 2 or 3 days traveling and doing the appointment and all of that kind of thing as well. And of course, thinking in Saskatchewan, if you're traveling in the winter, who knows what might happen with the snow or something as well. So.
True. And I'm just going to pop to Roger and then back to you, Hanif, because you'll see when they talk telehealth, and to Sherry, I mean, you see the technology and the insurance companies, and I believe like physio, they are doing a bit when they're going through rehabilitation, but there's a couple others. Touch on those quickly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're touching on a very important part as an employer. When you have an employee that needs to go to the doctor, they have to book the appointment. They have to wait for, whenever they can get in. They leave at noon. They wait in the doctor's office for, on average, 45 minutes. Then they get in to see the doctor. Then after that, they're 5 minutes from home, so they go home. So there's an afternoon that's gone. So the carriers are developing products right now, and I'll just pick on two. So Grey West, or Canada Life, I guess we call them now, they have virtual doctors. Manulife has Healthcare Online, where a member can actually consult with and even get prescribed something via teleconference. So it's FaceTime. It's basically, so you want to show, a rash on your arm or whatever it is. The service is open 24/7. And it doesn't just apply to your employees, it applies to their members as well. Not their members, their family as well. So if you're at home with your child, it's the middle of the night, you can't get in, you're not sure what to do, you can call this number. There's different services that are offered like that. So in terms of digital and getting technologically advanced, the pressures on the carriers are really growing, because we have to make sure we step up and deliver these, and we are. But at the same time, it's one of those things, is recognizing the needs of the employees. And that digital health and that healthcare online aspect of it is a massively growing, because you can't even get in to see a GP. Like, a lot of GPs are retiring. Finding a new one is always an amazing challenge. And so if you need to speak to somebody, you can go to the walk-in, but if you can do it within 45 minutes or an hour versus taking an entire afternoon off, there's your ROI, right?
Yeah. And you, Sherry, had mentioned, it was acronym, but CBT, Cognitive Behavior Therapy. That's online. That's trying to bridge the gap between your ability to see the counselor and work some situations. And you can't expect to solve things if you're seeing them monthly. There maybe needs to be that ongoing, right, Nori? So now the technology's allowed you to incorporate, because it's not just all about the technology, it just becomes part of the opportunity. And be able to build that in. Oopsie. I'm gonna have to get you guys to pick that up, sorry. We're family, aren't we? And Roger, and to Sherry, another one is pharmacogenetics. That's a big word to say, but it's basically allowing the insurance companies to provide tools to help us figure out when we have someone ill. Mental illness is one of the biggest issues, and chronic pain. Those two are the biggest ones to try and get the best therapy to get the employee healthier, faster, back to work, and happy everybody. And so it allows them, this is a simplified version, they basically take a DNA swab and they can figure out, I react differently than Michael to medication if I have to be treated for bipolar. But they say, and I've got a good friend, it takes sometimes up to 2 years to get the proper adjustment. So just think what that does for the family. Just think about what that does for the employer, the relationship amongst all. So as much as we're scared and we really don't want to invite this stuff in, I think it becomes important. And Hanif, you probably see it on the HR side. And to Gary, like some of the tools that are making the world of HR a little bit more easy to manage.
Sure, yeah. I mean, certainly every single, or most every business now has a HRS, Human Resources Information System in place, and that's revolutionized HR and how we manage it, and it kind of keeps HR folks organized as long as the management team is also in place to actually utilize that system, and unfortunately there's a bit of a disconnect. I think in terms of digital trends in general, this is sort of a kind of a yin-yang thing, where there is a dark side to it, and there is certainly some positives. We talked earlier about part of the wellness side of things is hiring the right people. And how do we go about hiring the right people? And there is a host of digital platforms, ZipWhip to be one of them, SaaS Jobs is another, where it's a corral for every single possible applicant from every part of the world. And has that made your life easier, or has that actually complicated things? And I actually think it's gone the other direction. It's complicated things, where now you've got to sort through more resumes, and you got to sort through more. And I've often tell clients, you can't judge a person by their resume, and it doesn't tell the full story. So now you've got 1,000 people to choose from versus 50. And how do you go about that? So on that front, I think it's made it difficult. On the flip side, the advice I give to all clients is hire for attitude, train for skill whenever you have the opportunity to do that, because that fits into your culture, that fits into your vision, that gives you the opportunity to find that right person in the long term when you have that opportunity to do that. Well, now there's some very good online tools to do psychometric testing, which allows you to give you a different level of insight versus simply interviewing, in terms of sort of some of the behavioral components of this individual and how that may fit into to your organization. There's some very, very good data to show that psychometric testing, if you profile the role correctly and if you profile the type of organization correctly, if you actually complement that with some good psychometric testing, you can actually have a very good employee, let's say, for the long term. So I think these are, this digital trend is certainly, it's there. Having said that, it is a cyclical thing, and I'm going to give you an example that I share often. We have, many companies introduced IVR, interactive voice recording. Do you remember this? Where press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 3 for this. And it was set up to be more efficient. It was set up to be, I want my customer to go directly to the right people. That was a digital trend, or a trend that was sort of developed. Now it's gotten to a point where the minute I hear that, I press 0 because I want to actually talk to somebody again. Right? I mean, isn't that the truth? It's the same thing is happening in the teller space, bank teller space, where now companies are actually promoting that you will not have to speak to a recording. You can actually speak to a person. Credit cards are doing the same thing. So, while the digital trends are kind of moving that way and we're not going to get away from it, I think there is still something about that human interface and that human connection, especially in the HR space, where we have to kind of, really get to know that life path of each individual. So, my 2 cents on it.
Well, I'm sure Carla probably sees that in every other organization. When you send an email and you're right next door, right? And we do that. And and then we lose the human element, which we are humans. We need this. We need to have conversation. We need to, just give connection. And it becomes part of that total rewards, compensation, organizational well-being, because, the Globe and Mail said it well, we're people, not machines. Right? We need to still keep human being in the whole world and scheme of life, because that becomes very important. Carla, you probably see that. And when you get disconnect with your people, how do you keep them together?
So I can honestly say that's not an issue for me right now, but in the past I've seen that in some of the other organizations I've worked in. To Deb's point, right? You're sitting beside someone, but you instant message them or you email them instead. But I just think too earlier, the discussion around, it's about that conversation. So I just think of, if you have an HR self-service where people go in to change their address, you're missing that opportunity to talk to them about that exciting thing in their life, to let them know that you're engaged and involved in their life as well. So I would miss that if we didn't have that piece. So that kind of builds on what you said as well, Hanif. There's still that connection piece, and I think HR plays a big role in that, just because we understand all the different gamuts that could be in someone's life cycle, and we know how to connect it to other pieces that we offer as a business to help support them through that.
And I know that it's difficult on a phone to get a hold of somebody nowadays, so you can 3 phone calls and 8 voicemails. But I'll tell you one thing, Cliff's relentless, and he's that guy. He's that phone guy, and I'll tell you what, the relationships he has is tight, because it's important for him to meet and talk to people and get to know the other side than just the business side of it. So I think that's the one challenge we have, because now, and I'm segueing into and we've got about 5 minutes, and I got to wrap up, because I apologize. I hope that I'm not making everybody starve to death. No, we're not starving? Okay. Because it gets into now moving into this diversified culture that we have, like the generational, the cultural diversity, so one answer is not going to work. So what would you see as a challenge, Carla, if you were to say, that's great to have this conversation, but there's probably some barriers to that?
So it's great to have the conversation, but I'm big on action. So what do you do after you have the conversation? So I think it aligns to identifying really what is the goal that you want to achieve. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier from fitness perspective, and I always go back to SMART goals. So as an organization, I always want to think, what is it we're looking to achieve, and how are we going to measure it? And then let's put that into play. So often I think we get stuck on the how do we make it happen, and then we don't make it happen. So I encourage everyone to just kind of think, the next step is to make it live.
In our office, we have a 65-year-old and we have a 22-year-old within an office of 25 people. And amazingly enough, depending on the culture that you foster in your workspace, there needs to be a mutual respect. And I'm not going to pick on you, Colton. I know that Mom already has here, but there's no doubt millennials are, an interesting challenge, because you've got some folks that have been doing it for a long time and they figured it out. Millennials want it and they want it right now and let's go and all this kind of thing. And I'm not saying that's you, Colton. I'm just saying in general. But, when you're dealing with that kind of a workforce, you just have to be sensitive to these variations, because they are very real. They definitely come into play. And as you know, if you start getting a bunch of whatever you want to call it, conflict or issues within the office because people aren't seeing eye to eye, that really impacts productivity. So, leadership and the culture that you foster in terms of a respect for all levels, culturally as well as by age band, come into play in a very big way. It's not an easy thing. There's no doubt about it. It's actually probably one of the toughest challenges you'll face, because you've got a whole bunch of folks that are going to be retiring and you got to bring in some new people. So it's a shift for sure. And it's a big part of of engaging your workforce right now?
Does everyone know all the 5 sort of generations that we're, can you name them? Let's start with the most obvious, Millennials. Then? I know I look old, but I'm not
You're
quite
one of
there
them
yet.
too.
Not quite there yet. So baby boomer is 2.
Gen X,
Gen X.
traditional,
Gen Y is millennials.
X and Y.
Z, right? And we have one more. Did we miss one? Traditionals. Yeah. So those are the 5. And, I think we make generalizations around each of them. And, and yes, there are different life experiences that each of them bring to the table and have gone through, and certainly we have to be recognizing of that. I looked up an interesting article when I was sort of researching for this as well, and it was by Harvard Business Review, and I thought I'd share it with you. Because it sort of talks about this whole generational, and you can overlay diversity on top of this as well, because there's a cultural component to it as well. But what the Harvard Business Review suggested was not to dwell on the differences, and to build collaborative relationships, to study your employees, to look at cross-generational mentoring, and to go back to life paths. And everybody has their own life path. And just because you're 65, and we assume that you want to retire, that's not necessarily the case. And just because you're 25 and we assume you want flexibility in your work, that may not necessarily be the case either. So they suggest looking at incentive plans that are built on sort of that life path, whatever that looks like. And one of the things that they also and I think is fantastic is doing cross-generational mentoring. Not young to old only, and also old to young. And I think that it's and culturally, newcomer to non-newcomer. I think these are all important ways to engage everybody and understand kind of different perspectives when dealing with all this new diversity and differences in the workplace.
For me, my workplace is all a bunch of females, for the most part, that are between the ages of 26 and 34. So we don't have a whole lot of diversity in our particular workplace. But one of the things we come across, particularly when we're dealing with clients or things like that, is that the way that we interact with different people needs to change based on what it is that their goals are. Right? So as employers that do have a challenge of, unlike my workplace, where you've got a variety of people in different stages of life, is that the things that worked or have worked historically for our, baby boomers and things like that, just it might not work for the people that are coming in. And having a clear understanding, I think, as to what people expect from you as an incoming employee and what you expect from them as an incoming employee is super important. You were talking lots about the company vision, mission statement. I think that if people are on board with that and they see how they can fit, makes a big difference as well. And then, Carla was saying too, smart goals are great, but unless you actually implement them, there isn't a whole lot that we can do. I've had several companies over the years contact me in regards to trying to start some sort of morning stretching program for everybody, which is fantastic. And then I get asking some questions. Well, do you have people that sit at a desk? Are there people that are also doing some manual labor? Are there some people that are doing this? Because the one stretching program for everybody, although it might work, it might not be as beneficial. Do you have some people in particular roles that are consistently getting injured or hurt? Is that different for our older generation versus our younger generation and how they're doing that job? And then it's, I'll have to think about that, and crickets. So there's a variety of different things I think to consider in that regard as well, and basically understanding that we can't treat everybody the same. It comes down to that individual and what they're looking for. I've got kids. Sometimes having it be their idea is the best thing about it, and brainstorming can be helpful for that.
And it does create challenges, but I think it creates opportunities, and maybe that makes us better communicators. Maybe that's something we got to get back to. I always think about the co-op student that came to us, and Dylan Pat. And I always remember he spent a year with us, and as a private sector company, which all of you are, you know that there is not a box, a rule that you have when you come to work. It might be 70%, but then there's going to be days where it just goes out the window. Anyways, this young gentleman didn't realize what he was in for, and there were some days I'm sure that his head was going to blow off his shoulders. But at the end of the year, he actually said, to Cliff or Pat, he says, "I came in a boy and I left a man." On that note, I would love to keep talking, and I think this is fantastic. If I said another hour, I'm sure you guys could keep rolling. I have so many questions, and we have so many conversation. Maybe we have to pick up on this next year. Is there any quick questions from the audience before I say thanks to my panel members? Colton. Yeah, and we should.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah. The poor man. He was trying to play soccer and
I'm not going to stand. Sorry.
ended on crutches.
They don't believe me that I'm actually hurt, so I can't go on disability. I have a bit of an ask for everyone in the audience. So I'm a bit involved in the marketing group at Wiegers, and one of the things we do, and this touches on a lot of the topics the panel has talked on, is produce different video content. We call them cliffhangers, and we talked about financial wellness being one thing that maybe your employee doesn't want to sit down with a person, or maybe they don't work with Renee and they don't get that access. But they could learn a little bit watching a video on wills or critical illness or things like that. Where we run into a problem is we don't know what you guys want. So what my ask is for everyone else, think on that. What do you want to learn from us? What do you want to hear from us? And it can be very specific to your company. If you guys have a whole bunch of people coming to you and saying, I don't know how to work this app, I don't understand how this functions, bring it to us. We could make a video, honestly, pretty quickly just for your company alone. And if you guys are asking that question, probably a few other people are thinking the same. So please pass that along to your advisors, whoever you work with. The questions that you have, they don't need to be specific to your plan, to health and dental. Anything that's going on that maybe we could address, we'd love to create some content and put it out there for you and then for anyone else who wants to see it. So that's the only thing I had to add.
I always like to be provocative with comments or questions, but 15 years ago, I went into an organization and initiated bringing in a wellness program. And my peers at the time, their initial reaction was, well, why do we need to worry about wellness as an employer? That's the employee's responsibility. There's got to be a lot of small companies out there that are still owned and managed by baby boomers. And for a lot of them, they don't see the importance of wellness. So the question that I would always pose to people is, how do you deal with that? Because I know what I had to go through to deal with that, to try to convince the people that don't believe that it's an employer's responsibility on wellness. Why is wellness even important? That should be the employee's responsibility. So I'd be interested in the panel's reaction to that comment.
Well, so wellness has come a long way. 15 years ago, you're absolutely right. I mean, people didn't even dive into the space because of that exact reason. What's happened now, though, and the response that I would give you if you were in a position where you had to prove the benefit of, is that if there is now data to support the concept of wellness from a holistic perspective, and I'm not just talking about exercise, I'm talking about mental health and financial well-being and so on, that there is a direct link to productivity for the employee. So the idea, of course, would be to prove that to the employer by showing them the stats and showing them the data. It doesn't have to be from one carrier, because we share a lot of that stuff too. CLIA, the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, has very specific data showing that an employee that is well, and define well means feels okay, somewhat active, mental health okay, and so on, will be 2 to 3 times more productive than somebody that isn't. So from a business perspective, you look at that and go, we touched on presenteeism. We could have did a whole session on that all morning if we wanted to. So showing the numbers and the data to support wellness, and it's not going anywhere, it's absolutely here, is critical to that endeavor. But I completely agree with you. You have that conversation 15 years ago, they say, yeah, that's the employee's problem, I got a business to run.
It's still out there today, though.
I'm sure it is, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Great point, I'm glad he brought that up for sure.
like I mentioned earlier, I come from a management perspective with an HR, playing around in the HR side of things. But certainly from a productivity side, there's some good data. Mercer has some very good data on engagement, and I'll use engagement synonymously with wellness, that there is less away days, there is more productive days, however you define productivity, task per person, and higher profitability amongst engaged individuals. There was very recently, I don't know if you saw it, but Microsoft Japan, I don't know if anyone has seen this, Microsoft Japan just recently went to a 4-day work week. Did you hear about this? So what do they find? So this is in contravention to sort of the popular notion of working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, because that's the way to do it, because that's the way we did it when we were back in the day. They went to a 4-day work week, 8 hours a day, and saw a 40% increase in productivity year to date from this time last year. So what they're saying is that by giving them that extra day, employees are more regenerated, they're actually more productive, and that is doing more tasks, in that time span than they normally would. So there is data out there that is challenging that contravention, and it's fascinating. And Microsoft is not the only one. There's some other companies out there, and if you do some research, you'll look at it and you'll see that. I have a Flex Friday for some of my staff if they want to take Fridays off. Cost me a little less, to be honest. Keep the lights on maybe a little less often, I don't know. But, from a productivity standpoint, I think, it's doing all right. So there is some data out there.
While she's walking over, and I agree with you, Gary, because the hardest thing is, like everybody wants to show me why this works. Common sense would say, I'd like to think we could go back to common sense, but maybe we can't measure return on investment, but I think we can measure value on investment. If we put something in, maybe we don't need the stats to show it, but we could probably make an observation. And we're moving there very slowly, but we're moving there because it's kind of like the new way of thinking. If you're not entertaining that conversation with the generation, 50% of the marketplace is going to be millennials pretty quick here. So we need to move forward. That's how they're thinking.
So just was wondering, when they implement a program like that, or with your Flex Fridays, are the employees still earning their regular wage with those types of programs?
So good question. So Microsoft, yes, they are. From what I understood, in my case, no, they're paid on a per hour basis. So the other thing I actually wanted to just to compliment on that as well, Management 101. It doesn't matter if you're managing, a power company. It doesn't matter if you're managing a financial company, or if it doesn't matter if you're managing a 7-Eleven, quite frankly. Management 101 basically says that if something takes up 10% of your resources, of your dollars, it requires 10% of your effort. And I don't think anyone would really argue with that logic. And so what I challenge folks with is, well, there is something that takes up 50 to 80% of your expenses, and that's your people. And yet, we choose not to spend 50 or 80% of our time dealing with them. In fact, we want to hire people so we don't have to deal with them, right? And so we can spend the rest of the time with other things, right? And so, when we're talking wellness, it's part of that 50 to 80% of the investment that we need to manage our most expensive resource, right? And so we talk about HR, human resources. I like to change the language to human capital, because we always talk about dollars and cents, right? But the new currency is human currency. It's human capital. And so we need to start thinking in those terms.
Well, and I know too, so you're talking about people that just aren't willing to buy into it. The research is out there, they have access to it. They probably use Google, even though they're a boomer, right? Just saying, my dad Googles all the time. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit off the cuff here, but one of the things too is if they're not implementing those programs, the turnover in their employees is going to cost them in the end anyways, because you still then have to train them and you have to get them incorporated into the company. And then if you don't have the wellness program and they're like, well, this company who does the same thing that I could go work for them and they have that wellness program, I'm going to kick off to that. And I was going to say as well, I've seen the 32-hour work week in lots of different research, and people are just simply more productive for a variety of reasons. You can get to your appointments on your day off. as opposed to taking time off work, and all of those different kinds of things as well. So there's a variety of things to consider in regards to that. Whether they want to see the research and they want to actually incorporate that into their company is their own decision, I guess, but ultimately I think it's going to end up costing them in the end. And there's lots of different ways to even make small steps towards that, and part of it could just be working on some of that culture. And it's really hard with the management if they don't believe in that. It's going to make it like, oh yeah, we're going to do a wellness program, great. A lot of people aren't going to necessarily buy into it then either, and it's going to end up not helping them the way that they think that it will in the end.
It's work in progress, but the good news is we've started it, and I know we're going to get to where we want to be, but we have to all do a little bit of heavy lifting, and it is going to be about education. And on that note, maybe if they don't quite understand the cost to the business, is just think about this number, is that 7.5 days on average goes to absenteeism, which is about 3% of your salary. Presenteeism is 7.5 times greater. So you don't need math. You just need to understand that and look in your office and say, if I'm not doing these things, it's probably uncomfortable and it's new and they just don't know and it's breaking these barriers of this conversation. But at the end of the day, this isn't lying. This is what it is. So, I mean, it becomes, again, part of what we need to do collaboratively as a company, as an individual, as a family. We need all work together for the better good. So, on that note, I want to say thank you so much, Carla and Roger and Hanif and Haylie, for coming out and sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of the audience questions. I'm going to get everybody going, but I'm going to announce, do you guys want to win some prizes? I do have prizes here. If I got to find that. And then it's lunch served. Oh my gosh, where did it go? Okay, we've got from Haylie. She's giving us a 90-minute massage and a 30-minute consult. And so we've got tickets, the blue tickets. So if someone wants to, Renee, are you doing the drawing on that?
No, Brenda.
Oh, you draw. Okay.
This is for the 90-minute massage? And yeah, okay. It's ticket number 4762247.
4762277. There we go.
2247.
2247. Perfect. And Hanif, tell me quickly, because I've got my paper. You've got $1,000. Yep.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I do a professional search and direct and search and recruitment. So I've got a $1,000 voucher to go towards your next direct hire or professional search through my firm, not to someone else. So just make that clear. So yeah, so $1,000.
And the number is 4762218.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. And we've got 2 memberships for Motion Fitness, 3 months memberships. So I'll grab that while you're doing that. So the number is 4762230. Got it? There we go. And the second one. Okay. The second one is 4762212. Bingo. All right. And I'm thinking there might be one more, but maybe I'm just... Yes. Yes. Thank you. Karen.
And we have
Karen, tell me what you're doing really quickly. It's right here. One custom core strength workout and expires at the end of the year and the winner. And then we've got some fun stuff from Hundseth. So that, and you're off to lunch. 4762277. 77? Yep, there we go. Perfect.
Who won this other second motion? Did someone win the second motion?
Perfect. All right. And then some just kind of fun stuff with Hundseth. Just some, is that it?
I think we did that one. Or which?
Hundseth?
I'm not sure who won what here.
We're family, we can do this. Okay, we're good. Is it good? This was for, yes. Yes. And then Hundseth has some giveaways, so I'll just grab the bucket. And you're probably going, get your shit together, Debbie. 476-2253, and Brenda's got some just Hundseth, there's polo shirts and a bottle and that type of stuff. So, 253. Nope, there we go. Perfect. All right. Okay, that's it. Lunch is served. Please share in conversation. If there's any questions you have of the panel members, I think they're all staying for lunch. Thank you very much for coming out. We're going to send a survey out electronically. Yes, we're in the digital trend market, but please take the time to, it's very, very brief. Give us your answers, give us your thoughts, and even forward thinking, tell us what we want to do next year round. Thank you very much for coming out, people.